Hello there, and welcome back to the News Project Live on GNAT-TV's Facebook page. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today on Friday, July 23rd. We'll start off with some statewide news and notes, and then we'll drill down to the local level here. First of all, and also a state story that has a lot of local resonance for us as well. The U.S. has opted to keep the Canadian border, at least Americans traveling into Canada, closed until August 21st. That comes shortly after the Canadian government had announced that it was going to reopen the Canadian border to allow Canadians to travel to the U.S. on August 9th. Obviously, Canadian business is important down here in our end of the state, as well as even more important farther north of us in the Burlington and Northeast Kingdom areas. So I guess folks from Canada can come down here. We won't be able to do that, however, until the 21st of August, and that's assuming that the current uptick we're seeing in some of the cases, COVID cases from the Delta variant, don't get too out of hand. That, of course, was kind of disappointing to Governor Phil Scott and several other state officials who have weighed in with White House officials to see if they can maybe get that decision on the Canadian border re-examined. So we'll see. But anyway, I guess at least we have a date when we could go back up north and go to Montreal or Quebec or wherever, but not quite as quickly as we had hoped, perhaps. Another interesting story we were following this week involves the large opioid settlement that that has been reached with four drug companies: Cardinal, McKesson, Amerisource, Bergen, and Johnson & Johnson. Reached a nationwide settlement agreement totaling $26 billion to states and municipalities, owing to their involvement in, selling pharmaceuticals that have been tied to opioid addiction on the part of their patients later on. T.J. Donovan, the Attorney General of Vermont, has indicated that the money will be going to address the opioid crisis here in Vermont. As many of you will remember, before the COVID-19 pandemic kind of bumped the opioid crisis into second place, fairly or foully. The opioid crisis had been a big concern here in the state, as it's been nationwide. Tremendous number of people have passed away in recent years from opioid overdoses, and then Vermont has not been an exception to that. However, the trend lines seem to be at least stabilizing in 2018, 2019. But in 2020, as the COVID pandemic took hold and people were forced to isolate and maybe experiencing greater levels of stress and anxiety, folks who were already struggling with opioid addiction, fell on further hard times. A total of 157 Vermonters died of opioid overdoses last year in 2020. That's a record number for the state. But at least this settlement will provide at least some money to help for perhaps treatment and remediation in whatever way might be found to be desirable. It's important to note, I think, that this is a separate case from the one involving Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family, which has received a lot of attention. Those are the folks who manufactured OxyContin. It's also been linked to apparently many folks struggling with opioid addiction. So that case is still not settled yet, or at least Vermont has not signed on to that settlement that has been reached. Some states have, but not so far here in Vermont. Certainly an important subject which we will continue to follow quite closely. It's rained a lot here, as you probably noticed, over the last couple of weeks. And however, There are parts of Vermont up north which have received a lot less rainfall than we have and are still in a semi-drought situation. It's kind of hard to imagine, but other than the four southernmost counties in the state, Bennington, Windham, Rutland, and Windsor, uh, counties up there are really struggling with some dry weather. And looking at some of the numbers today, need about 7 to 9 inches of rainfall over the next month or so to kind of end that drought. That sounds like an awful lot of rain. But anyway, just interesting that there's such a stark difference between what we're experiencing down here in terms of rainfall and our neighbors farther north. Statewide, an estimated 314,000 people live in areas experiencing drought in Vermont. Turning back to the COVID numbers again, seemed like things were kind of trending in a good direction, but as I mentioned earlier, that Delta variant is starting to really kick in even bigger than it was in the past couple of weeks. Vermont health officials reported 34 new COVID-19 infections as of yesterday, and that's up slightly, well, from 21 the day before. We were kind of tracking along in the single digits there for quite a bit, but the numbers seem to be ticking upwards. Time to kind of just be aware of that and maybe not throw that face mask away quite as quickly as we're all hoping to do. There is only one Vermonter currently in the hospital in intensive care, and over 83% of Vermonters have received at least one dose of the vaccine. 77% of us are fully vaccinated, and from what we're hearing so far, seems like most of the new cases involve folks who haven't been vaccinated. There have been a few well-publicized cases of people who've gotten infections even though they've been vaccinated. It's not that uncommon, really. No vaccine is going to be 100% foolproof and may need boosters anyway. The overwhelming number of cases of people who have come down with the Delta variant apparently are from folks who haven't been vaccinated. So just interesting to bear that in mind. Also, one note that just came in earlier today, out in Provincetown, Massachusetts, out in the tip of Cape Cod, there's been a rather large outbreak of COVID infections there. Some 256 cases reported over the past week. And the Vermont Department of Health is encouraging any Vermonters who might have been out in Provincetown vacationing or whatever reason to get a COVID test. Out of those 256 cases, the state believes that only about 10 may involve Vermonters, but of course, those 10 Vermonters could pass that along to many more. So if you have been in Provincetown recently, within the past month, might be a good idea to go in and get a COVID test just to be on the safe side. All right, turning to some local news, the Manchester Journal has an interesting story in their paper today about the Richville Road solar project. Many of you have heard of this already, and here on GNAT we had a segment about that we produced about 5 or 6 weeks ago, I guess it must be at this point. Proposal being made to put in a 500 megawatt solar facility on the field there, just to the south of Bournebrook, running alongside Richville Road, short distance, a few hundred yards, I guess. But it's been a point of contention with some of the neighbors who live on Richville Road and who are concerned that the viewshed will be impacted. There was a public hearing or site visit held 5 or 6 weeks ago by the Public Utilities Commission, and the hearing officer in that case has submitted a finding that solar array that's been proposed should not be approved based on the perceived impacts to the aesthetics of the area. Now, that's not a final decision. That still has to go before a 3-member commission, but it's certainly an interesting development in that case, and one which we'll continue to follow as it goes forward from there. It's been certainly contested by the neighbors who are worried about it. It is also a preferred site within the town zoning ordinances. Interesting tug of war going on there. And again, that recommendation to the PUC is not yet final, and they do not have to accept that decision of that hearing officer. Laura Sibilia, Representative Laura Sibilia, excuse me, who represents several towns in Bennington and Windham County. She represents Dover, Reedsboro, Searsburg, Somerset, Stamford, Wardsboro, and Whitingham, to be precise, has been named to serve on the board of the Vermont Communications Union Districts Association. That's a board that was created through Act 71, which was the act that enabled community broadband or an act to accelerate community broadband development. She will be working with and assisting the communications union districts that have been set up, and an important post for one which she is extremely well qualified. We've had opportunities to talk with Representative Sibilia on a number of occasions about broadband issues, and she certainly will be well suited for that post. So important to hear that. Turning to our events page, if I may. And by the way, I hope all of you have been checking out on the GNAT-TV's website the new events page that we've been putting up. You can find it on GNAT-TV.org, and it's a listing of all the major events that are going on, of which there are a lot this summer. But we wanted to just point out that tomorrow up at Merck Forest in Rupert, they're starting the BioBlitz. It's 2 days of exploration of natural resources, coming up with finding wildlife, insect and plant species that are there. And it's been interesting over the past, I think, 3 years since they've done a BioBlitz, that number of species in the plant and insect world, they didn't know they were there, and that's how they found out. So you can join in on the fun, and having gone there last year for it, I can tell you that it is indeed a lot of fun. Starts off tomorrow, Saturday at 7 a.m. If you're one of the early risers, there's a bird walk planned. That'll be followed by a botany walk. Actually, there'll be 4 botany walks from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. That will be taking place on Saturday. And if you're really into this, you can hang around, have some dinner, and come back in the evening for the bat and the moth search. Sounds like it could be a lot of fun. Sunday, more of the same, bird walks, botany walks, amphibian and reptile walks, and then back to the bats and the moths in the evening. So you can find out more by going to Merck Forest's website or their Facebook page and register if you haven't done so already. And I can assure you, if biology is something you're interested in, this is a great way to deepen that knowledge. One last little event we'll point out, because we also did a little news segment about it earlier this week, which you can find again on our website under the News Project. A blues festival is coming to the Southern Vermont Arts Center on August 7th. That's a Saturday. It'll be from 12 noon to 6 p.m. 4 bands will be playing. The Alexis P. Suter Band, the Bruce Katz Band, the James Armstrong Band, and the Johnny Rawls Band. Having heard a couple of them in the past, I can tell you they all know what they're doing. It should be a lot of fun if you're into that genre of music. Tickets range in price from $30 to $60, and again, you can learn more about it by going to the Southern Vermont Arts Center's website at svac.org. All right, well, that will do it for us for this week. We will be off next week, but back in August. So have a great day, have a great weekend. This has been Andrew McKeever for the GNAT-TV News Project, and it's been a pleasure to be with you. See you next time.